When a woman first feels your absence, the very first emotion that arises is not anger, not shame, not regret. It's confusion. She begins to sense that something is different, something has shifted in the dynamic, and she cannot immediately put her finger on it. Human beings are creatures of habit, and when a pattern breaks, the mind automatically starts seeking explanations. That's why she starts to wonder, why haven't you called? Why isn't there a message from you? Why is the energy she once felt so consistently from you suddenly missing? This curiosity is not neutral. It creates a quiet disturbance inside her, a kind of unsettled energy that pushes her to search for answers. At first, she may dismiss it. She might tell herself, you're busy or preoccupied or you're giving her space. But the mind is relentless when it encounters silence where there used to be sound. She starts replaying the last conversations, trying to decode if something was off, if something she said triggered your withdrawal, if there was a subtle shift she overlooked. Your absence doesn't just stay outside of her. It begins to live inside her thoughts. And here's where the human psyche reveals its nature. We often don't value presence until we are confronted with absence. When you were consistently there, your calls and texts felt ordinary, even predictable. But the moment they are gone, the ordinary becomes extraordinary. She begins to realize how accustomed she was to your attention, how much space you actually occupied in her daily rhythm. This is why the first stage of your absence is marked by curiosity mixed with confusion. It's a tug of war between assuming you're fine and sensing that something deeper is happening. Over time, curiosity turns into subtle anxiety. She starts asking herself questions she cannot easily answer. Did you lose interest? Are you pulling away? Did she do something wrong? It's in these small moments of uncertainty that the absence begins to do its work. Unlike words, absence cannot be argued with. It cannot be denied. It is felt in silence, and silence creates the loudest echo. Even if she tries to distract herself, the pattern is still broken, and that break leaves its mark. She checks her phone more often than usual, only to be met with nothing. She scrolls through past messages, trying to feel that spark again, but the silence between the words only deepens the feeling that something has changed. That's the first emotional wave your absence stirs. Not devastation, not regret, but confusion strong enough to shake her certainty and make her aware of how much of you she was unconsciously depending on. This is the power of the first wave. Confusion forces her to think, to question, and to begin a process of self-reflection she never intended to take. Your absence is not loud, but in that quiet space, it already begins to create impact. And it is only the beginning of what you will feel. As time passes, the confusion she first felt slowly transforms into something heavier, the awareness of a void. Your absence is no longer just a question mark in her mind. It becomes a presence of its own, a space she cannot ignore. At first, it might be subtle, almost invisible. She notices it in the little moments, the ones that once felt ordinary. When she picks up her phone in the morning and doesn't see your name flashing across the screen. When she goes about her day and realizes there's no check-in, no familiar voice to ground her. It starts to weigh on her more than she expected. Human beings are wired to adapt quickly to patterns, and whether she admitted it or not, your presence had become part of her routine. It was the comfort she overlooked, the consistency she assumed would always be there. But now, with that routine broken, the absence itself becomes louder than any words you could speak. Every small gap where your voice or your energy used to exist feels like a hollow reminder of what is missing. She may try to brush it off. She tells herself she's fine, that she doesn't need you, that she can move on with her day without thinking about it. But deep inside, she feels the gap growing. It's not about the grand gestures. It's about the quiet moments, the late night conversations, the small reassurances, the feeling of being understood. When those disappear, it creates a silence that you cannot fill with distractions. No amount of scrolling through social media, talking to friends, or keeping busy can replace the unique imprint your presence left in her daily life. And this is where absence begins to change its shape. It's no longer just about noticing you're not there. It becomes about realizing how much you once gave. The emotional void is not neutral. It highlights the value of what was lost. She starts to notice the difference between the way life felt with you in it and the way it feels without you. Even if she tries to deny it, the comparison is unavoidable. The mind does not forget comfort easily, and the heart does not quickly erase the spaces that once felt safe. The truth is, people rarely recognize the importance of presence when it's constant. They take it for granted, assuming it will always be available, but the moment it's gone, the weight of its absence becomes undeniable. That's what she feels now. Not just a missing message or a lack of conversation, but the deeper emptiness of knowing that something meaningful has been removed from her world. And with every passing day, the silence grows louder, the void becomes clearer, and she begins to realize that absence has its own power. It is in this stage that she finally starts to feel the cost of your distance. Not in anger, not in confrontation, but in the quiet recognition that her world feels incomplete without your presence. Your absence eventually pushes her into a space she never intended to enter, self-reflection. In the beginning, she was focused on you, on why you weren't reaching out, on the gap you left behind. But as time stretches on and your silence remains steady, something shifts. She no longer has the comfort of projecting everything onto you. She cannot place the blame or soothe her curiosity with quick answers. Instead, she is left with herself. And that is often the most uncomfortable place to be. When you were present, she could use you as a mirror. Your reactions, your energy, your words gave her feedback about who she was in the relationship. If she was loved, she felt secure. If you were upset, she felt guilty. You were the sounding board, the one who reflected her back to herself. But now that mirror is gone, and she is left staring into silence. That silence does not lie, does not soften the truth, and it forces her to face questions she cannot escape. She starts to wonder about her choices. Did she push you away? Did she take your presence for granted? Did she use her words carelessly, believing there would always be another chance to fix it? These thoughts don't appear all at once. They creep in quietly, during the unguarded moments, late at night when the world is still, or during the day when something reminds her of you. The weight of these questions presses down. Your absence becomes the trigger that forces her to confront the uncomfortable truth about her own behavior. This is where growth, or regret, often begins. Reflection is not easy because it exposes the patterns we usually avoid. When you step away, she can no longer hide behind your responses. She has to acknowledge her own. It's not just about missing your texts or your presence anymore. It's about realizing how she acted when she had you and whether she truly honored what you brought into her life. That mirror of silence reflects not what she wants to see, but what she needs to see. And the more she sits with herself, the more powerful this stage becomes. Because absence is not passive. It actively reveals. Without you there, she sees herself more clearly. She feels the consequences of her words, the reality of her decisions, and the depth of what it means to lose someone who once cared. That's the paradox of absence. It doesn't simply erase, it teaches by showing what cannot be replaced. In this stage, she is not just missing you, she is facing herself. And that can be the hardest punishment of all, because there is no escaping the truth when the mirror no longer lies. As your self-reflection deepens, your absence begins to create something even more powerful than confusion or regret. It sparks longing. Longing is not simply missing someone. It is the aching awareness of what once was and the desperate pull toward what can no longer be touched. At first, she may have thought she could manage without you, that life would simply adjust and move on. But as the days stretch longer, she feels the emotional gravity of the bond you once shared. This is when the heart begins to whisper what the mind has tried to silence. She wants you back. She craves the stability, the comfort, the presence that you used to give her so freely. Longing often comes quietly, but it grows stronger with each reminder of you. A song you once shared, a familiar place, a casual phrase someone else says, all of these stir her emotions. Memory has a way of painting the past in brighter colors, of bringing back the best moments while softening the flaws. Your absence becomes not only a void, but also a stage where her mind plays the highlight reel of everything she once cherished. She starts to recall the laughter, the safety, the intimacy, the way she felt seen when you were there. And every memory, instead of soothing her, intensifies the ache of your absence. What makes longing so powerful is that it blurs the line between emotional need and emotional recognition. She doesn't just want you because you are gone. She realizes how much of herself was tied to the experience of being with you. The late night conversations, the quiet moments of comfort, the sense of belonging, all of it becomes a craving that no distraction can truly fill. She might try to mask it with busyness, with other people, even with denial, but underneath it all, the longing remains like a quiet hum in the background, steady and relentless. And here lies the quiet truth. Longing is a sign of value realized too late. It's not about whether you were perfect or whether the relationship was without flaws. It's about the recognition that your presence brought something irreplaceable, something that cannot be easily substituted. When absence gives rise to longing, it reveals the depth of what was once taken for granted. This is the stage where silence becomes most powerful, because it doesn't need to demand or beg, it simply lets her feel. And the more she feels, the stronger the longing becomes, until it transforms into an undeniable truth she cannot avoid. She misses you, not just in thought, but in the depths of her heart. Longing is the emotional bridge between regret and realization. And it is in this space that she begins to truly understand what your absence has meant. Over time, the longing she feels doesn't just stay as a quiet ache, it evolves into realization. This is the moment when the fog begins to lift, when she starts to see things, not only with her emotions, but also with a sharper clarity. Realization is different from regret. Regret focuses on the past, but realization forces her to look at the truth of the present. It's when she begins to truly understand the role you played in her life, the depth of your presence, and the impact of your absence. At first, she may have convinced herself that what you brought was temporary, replaceable, or even unnecessary. But now, with the silence stretching on, she sees that what you offered wasn't ordinary. It was unique. The way you supported her, the way you listened, the way you gave without asking for much in return. These things begin to stand out with a new weight. The very qualities she may have overlooked or dismissed now shine with undeniable clarity. She realizes that she had access to something many people spend their whole lives searching for, someone who truly cared. Realization often strikes hardest when comparison enters the picture. As she interacts with others, she notices the absence of what you once gave. Conversations feel shallow, attention feels fleeting, and the connection she experiences elsewhere simply doesn't measure up. This is when the truth hits her most deeply. What she thought she could easily replace cannot be replicated. It's not about another person stepping in. It's about understanding that the essence of who you were in her life is beyond substitution. This realization can be painful because it comes with the awareness that she may have underestimated you while she had the chance. She may reflect on the moments where she dismissed your efforts, where she overlooked your value, or where she assumed you'd always be there, no matter how she acted. Now, your absence forces her to confront the reality that people are not guaranteed, and presence is not permanent. Providence is not permanent. What was once familiar and secure is now gone, and the weight of that truth becomes undeniable. The deeper this realization sets in, the more it humbles her. She starts to see not only what she has lost, but also the reasons why she feels the emptiness so strongly. It's not just about you, it's about the way she treated what you represented. And in that clarity, she finally begins to acknowledge that losing you wasn't just a shift in her daily life. It was a loss of someone significant, someone who mattered more than she admitted before. This is the quiet power of absence. It turns what was once taken for granted into something unforgettable. And that realization becomes a truth she cannot unsee. Eventually, all the reflection, longing, and realization converge into the final stage, acceptance. Acceptance does not come easily, and it is rarely free of struggle. She may resist it at first, holding on to the idea that you will return, that somehow things will go back to the way they were. But as time continues to move forward and your absence remains unshaken, she begins to understand that the silence itself carries an answer. It tells her that things are no longer the same, that the space she once filled with your presence must now be faced without you in it. Acceptance is not just about acknowledging that you are gone. It is about coming to terms with what that absence means. It forces her to reconcile with the reality that her actions, words, or choices may have played a role in creating this outcome. It demands that she stop searching for excuses or distractions and instead face the truth head on. This is where shame often deepens, because acceptance strips away denial and leaves only the reality of what has been lost. Yet in its own way, acceptance can also bring clarity. Once she moves past the stage of bargaining or false hope, she sees the situation for what it truly is. She begins to recognize that no matter how much she wishes otherwise, you are not reaching out, you are not chasing, and you are not trying to fill the gap anymore. That realization can be heavy, but it is also grounding. It forces her to see that relationships are not one-sided and that presence cannot be demanded. It must be nurtured and valued while it exists. As painful as it is, acceptance also carries a strange kind of respect for what once was. She may come to quietly admire the strength it took for you not to block, not to beg, not to force the situation, but simply to walk away and let silence speak. That choice tells her more than words ever could. It shows self-respect, it shows boundaries, and it shows that you valued yourself enough not to stay where you were, not fully appreciated. In this way, acceptance becomes not only about losing you, but also about acknowledging the strength you demonstrated in leaving. Ultimately, acceptance leaves her with two truths: that she cannot undo what has happened, and that your absence has changed her in ways she did not expect. It becomes a lasting lesson, one that shapes how she views connection, commitment, and the weight of taking someone for granted. And while acceptance may bring peace on the surface, beneath it lies the permanent imprint of your absence, a reminder she will carry long after the silence has settled. In the end, acceptance does not erase the loss. It simply teaches her to live with it.